Representative Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB194, colleagues, would prohibit a state or local official responsible for the conduct of an election or his or her employee from soliciting, accepting, or using donations of money, grants, property, or personal services from an individual or non-governmental entity for the purposes of funding certain election-related expenses, including voter education, voter outreach, or voter registration programs. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to call for the BIR.
All right, the question before us is going to be the adoption of the BIR, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from Randolph, Representative Fincher, first person speaking on the BIR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This gentleman yields.
Sir.
I want to commend you for bringing this piece of legislation. One thing I think we need to make clear at the outset, who does this apply to? I mean, who is covered by this bill and who is told they cannot receive funds?
Yeah, so on page 3 of the bill, under Section 1B, it says, notwithstanding any other law, no state or local public official responsible for the conduct of an election, nor his or her employee, may solicit, accept, or use any donation in the form of money, grants, property, or personal services from an individual or a non-governmental entity for the purpose of funding election-related expenses or voter education, voter outreach, or voter registration programs.
So basically what you're saying is that the only people who are prohibited from receiving these funds are government officials.
Correct.
And they're prohibited in using these funds to conduct elections or election activities.
Correct.
So if you have a group out there that is participating in voter education or whatever, they are not prohibited unless they're government officials.
Correct.
So basically, there's a very specific group that's being prohibited here.
Right. So
whose responsibility is it to conduct elections in this state?
Well, it's the Secretary of State as chief elections official, the probate judges, circuit clerks, absentee election managers, board of registrars, and poll workers, and sheriffs. Those are the public officials responsible for the conduct of the administration of our election laws.
And those are the only people who, under this legislation, would be prohibited from taking funds
Correct.
And using those funds to conduct an election.
Correct. And nowhere in this bill does it say that any private organization can go out and conduct seminars on their own or do any kind of voter registration drives on their own. This bill does not prohibit that.
They can still do that
on their own.
To their heart's content, basically.
Correct. Correct.
They're allowed to do that. It is the state of Alabama's responsibility to conduct elections in the state of Alabama. And our local officials participate in that as well, but it is a state responsibility to do that. Your bill would prevent the commingling of government funds and private funds.
Correct.
There has been concern about elections and all of that, and we've all been through that very recently. But, you know, we all know that with money comes control. And if you accept money, you have the possibility of accepting outside control as well.
And influence.
And influence. And we never, I don't think we ever want to see Alabama put in a position where our strings can be yanked, especially in the election process, because that is a very, you know, that is what all of our activity is based on. We're elected officials. We want to see fair elections conducted by the state in a very fair manner.
Yes.
I commend you for bringing this. Thank you, Representative Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Fincher.
And the chair thanks the gentleman. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Clark, Representative Jackson, second person speaking on the BIR.
Mr. Speaker, gentlemen, will you yield?
Yes, sir.
You didn't mention any names of those organizations. You just gave some. Could you give some names of these organizations you're referring to?
Yeah, any private organization, nonprofit that would like to conduct voter
Name
registration.
these organizations, nonprofit, private, that's going to be involved in the process.
Well, there's been a few that's came out in the last couple of days against this bill. You know, it's a very simple
The League of Women-
four-page bill. If you read it, it's pretty clear about what it does. The League of Women Voters is free to go conduct voter outreach and voter seminars, voter registration on their own.
Are
This bill does not affect them.
Are they guilty of violating?
No,
That's what I was thinking.
no, as long as they do it on their own.
Haven't they been doing it on their own? Don't
Sure. So this bill does not affect them, so they shouldn't oppose it.
They shouldn't oppose it. They feel like they
Because it doesn't affect them.
They feel like their rights being infringed upon. That's why they oppose
Yeah,
it.
the bill's pretty clear.
See, the bill say one thing, the intent is a whole lot different from what the bill say. But see, I see what is happening. And it's kind of remind me, going back to 2020 elections, when we had a candidate to call the Secretary of State and ask for 11,784 votes.
When the what now? I couldn't hear you.
So when a candidate called the Secretary of State and asked them to go looking for more votes, now that should be prohibited. That is against the law. That should be a part of this process. See, teaching people the rights of voting, it shouldn't be infringed. And so I understand where you are. I see where you're coming from. I'm not gonna sit up here and try to debate, but I want you to see the intent, the spirit of the law, and the intent. See, we got two different categories we're looking at. We don't have voters fraud in Alabama, according to the Secretary of State. So I don't even see why this law would be necessary. See, the whole purpose of it is to, instead of enhancing the process, we want to limit the process of people. We ought to engage, we ought to be pushing young people coming out of high schools to get involved in the process, to learn the process of democracy. And the sooner they learn it, the more they'll get involved, and the more they get involved, the more they'll love it. See, we want to limit this process to just a few people and make it illegal to do the things that has been going on for decades, educating young people how to move forward in the process. Wes Allen, I see where you are, and I hope that it doesn't go any further than right here, because you got your little school groups, your Sunday school people, your church groups have been doing this, and it's going to hurt them because they think
It's not going to hurt them.
it's what they're thinking. Perception is reality. And when all these years they never had this process to tell them what they could and could not do. And this is perception is reality. So in this day and time, and what we're dealing with today, when we ought to be encouraging young people, we should be as elected officials, and I do every chance I get. I go to public schools and talk to civic classes, talk to government classes about the process. And that's what we should do. And you saying I can't do that. I'm a legislator. I'm an elected official.
No, sir. That's not what the bill does.
But it's the process that you're making me think
The bill is very
that I'm
clear.
walking across, I'm standing on shaky ground.
The bill is very clear, Representative.
That
very clear.
I cannot carry out.
This doesn't affect anything that you're talking about right now.
None of the things I'm talking about.
No, it does not.
Well, what does it affect?
It affects public officials
I'm a
who
public
run
official.
elections. Are you over the conduct of the elections
Oh,
process?
no.
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 You're not.
Oh, no. Only public official over the conduct, probate judges and
Right.
Secretary of State.
And the circuit clerks.
Do
the
they
board
go out?
registrar,
Do
the
they go
sheriff,
out and
absentee
campaign?
election managers.
Do any of those
All this
people
bill does,
Do any
Representative,
of those people go out and
all
campaign?
this bill does
No.
is make sure
Is somebody in your
cannot
district
take
campaigning like
private
that?
money. All these private groups are still free to go out and conduct their seminars.
Well, we're talking about
conduct
your
their voter outreach.
circuit clerk.
They still free to go out and conduct the voter
You don't
outreach,
want to talk about
anything
your
they want
circuit
to
clerk.
do.
You prohibiting your circuit clerks from doing this?
They cannot take private funding as it relates to.
You mean to tell me they've been getting paid?
They cannot take private
I
funding.
say I don't know anything about all this.
Process.
This is bringing it out. So what your bill say is something that's taking place.
Have you read the bill, Representative?
Yeah. You just told me what it does.
Have you read it?
No, I hadn't read the entire bill.
You hadn't read the entire bill?
I got the synopsis of it.
And we got
right
on
here.
to a couple weeks ago
No,
by another representative
I got it right
about
here.
being accused of not reading bills and not paying attention.
Well, it's not
You're
that.
telling me you hadn't read the bill?
I don't have to read the bill. I got my analysts to
My
read
goodness.
it. And they give me the report of it. And so that's what
I
I'm
believe
reading.
you haven't read my bill. It's a 4-page bill.
It's a so simple bill. So,
It's a 4-page bill.
4-page bill.
Very clear.
But it targeting certain people.
And it's not. It is making sure
It
our
targeting
elections are safe,
circuit
and
clerks,
secure,
you said,
and out of influence of private money.
What about those good people that they're taking money from people to go out and sponsor education on voters' rights?
Private individuals, private
You
citizens.
got circuit clerks that are doing that. We don't
Private,
have that.
I didn't say that. Private
Well,
individuals,
you're
private
addressing that issue,
organizations
so
are still able to
It has
go out.
to
It
be
does
something
not
that's
affect
taken
them.
place.
This bill does not affect them. You know that. You know
Something
this
like
bill
that has to
doesn't
have
affect
taken
them.
place for you to come up with this bill.
It doesn't affect them.
Because really, in my district, I have none of these things are happening.
I tell you what we need to do. Why don't you just read the bill while we're here?
I can do that right here.
Yeah.
Many
Won't take long to read
governing
4 pages.
organizations work with their local probate judges to ensure that our elections are secure.
Now don't read your talking points. Read the bill.
This is the bill. I'm just putting it in paragraphs.
Oh, okay.
Efficient and accessible. So you have some people that really don't want the probate judge to get involved in the process other than counting the votes when they come in. If that's what you're saying. Making sure that the votes are counted.
It is.
Making sure that the elections are proper.
It is the duty of the election officials.
And that's
to make sure
exactly
we
what
have
they
safe,
have been
secure,
doing.
Safe, secure elections.
In my district and in my surrounding areas, we haven't had anything to come out like this before. And what's so significant? They told me. Thomas said, I don't know where he's coming from. I said, well, maybe you know, but he know where he's coming from because maybe you have somebody that have done something of this nature. And that's usually what bills will do. When we have bills that we draw up that somebody has brought to our attention that maybe these things are occurred, and we want to make sure that we put a stop to it. But in my area, I'm just telling you, we haven't had that issue. We have good, clean elections, and and the greatest thing about it, what I want to say for our Secretary of State, when he was challenged by the pillow guy, he stood firm and said, Alabama have perfect what? Then he said they're transparent, our elections are fair and proper. So I want to remind the pillow guy, if he's out there listening by way of internet, that we in Alabama we don't go along with conspiracy theories. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. All right, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Blount County, Representative Standridge. Be the third person speaking on the BR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. First of all, you served as a probate judge before coming to this body, and I served as a probate judge before coming to this body, and we worked together on some things back in that time.
Sure did.
And I know that
We served together as probate judges together.
that's right.
Yeah.
And and during my service, I know that, I was, the chief election official for our county, oversee numerous elections. I know that you did the same thing. During that time, what I can say is, I always had proper funding through the government process. I had proper funding to fund what we needed to do to have the secure elections, to conduct those, without any private monies or any type of influence that may come along with that. Did you have the same experience when you were probate judge?
We always had what we needed. We didn't go without. And listen, I'm like you. These probate judges and circuit clerks and absentee election managers and board of registrars and poll workers, they're the ones that have the duty to make sure our elections are safe and secure and transparent, and they do a great job at it. And that we just need to make sure there's no private funding getting commingled with public funds as it relates to the administration of our election laws.
And I've reviewed this, I've read this bill and reviewed it and looked at it a few times, and what I see in it is what your goal is to keep integrity in our system.
Correct.
To make sure that we keep that integrity of that we conduct the elections and we're not having some outside group or something come in and affect that integrity. Am I right?
And it's about the perception too. I mean, and we just want to make sure that our elections are we want to make sure we put a firewall up, more firewalls to make sure our elections are safe and secure. That's what the bill is all about.
And it's really targeted. I mean, this bill, when you read it, it's targeted to those few people that conduct these elections. I mean,
Right.
just like the ones you've named over and over again so far, it only affects them. And the way I read the bill, they're the only ones that can get a penalty for it, right?
Right. Right.
I mean, those election officials that you've named, those few, are the only ones to get a penalty. Nobody else
right.
is under a penalty.
Those private organizations, it does not affect them. They're still free to go do their voter registration, education, and outreach.
And they're the only ones, the few, and those officials that are doing that, they're the only ones that are under a possible crime if they was to take the money
Right.
from somebody that they shouldn't, and from an outside organization that is coming in and trying to help fund election process or whatever that the official is doing. That official only.
Correct.
So,
Yep.
in my opinion, what you're doing is just trying to ensure integrity. It's integrity in our election and our process, and making sure that those officials know I'm going to use the resources we have in the government and conduct these elections, impartial, and do everything the right way. And this just makes sure that they know that they can't take that. So it puts that wall up.
Right.
You can't take that outside influence or private money. That's the way I read this bill.
Correct.
And from my experience as probate judge and being chief election official, I support this bill. I think it's a bill that will help ensure integrity in our elections, and I support it.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge. I appreciate it.
And the chair thanks the gentleman. The fourth person speaking on the BIR will be the gentleman from Montgomery, Representative Hassel.
I'd like to thank the speaker for the recognition. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Well, I saw this bill in committee, and you already know I disagreed with it
I understand.
because of the fact that we got, I live here in Montgomery, and you're dealing with a population of over 200,000 people. And so our probate judges, and we just did redistricting in special session. So all our judges and election centers have a budget. And I just imagine up to the point of everybody that moved, everybody that went somewhere, they get these white cards through the mail. And a lot of times, if they run out of money, a lot of people don't get them, they don't know where to go vote at. Because of the fact they use the private money to help voters to understand you got a new precincts, because if precinct changes, sometimes we use churches, Or we used to use schools. So we stopped using schools, started using churches. So if the money run out in the budget that they have, which is they need more money. That's why they reached out to these private entities to use those funds. So now they're gonna have to struggle to the point of we cannot reach voters to bring in, to get their new address or to be aware or the new precinct where they gotta vote at. I got a business and I had a customer that came inside my business and he sat down and I'll tell you this was the first time it was ever done. And that money was used through private money. On a radio station, it was I believe it was the Secretary of State office, or maybe it had been a probate judge. I think that, but he heard that he needed to go vote on the radio, the media. And that money, private money was used to do that. He was not aware he needed to go vote. I tell you this, and he's a Republican, Joe Tucker. I call him Joe Tucker, that's his nickname. But because of that money was used, people were aware to go vote. In the job description, I tell you, of every election center director, mapping and addressing, voter registration, election judge program, data entry, mail ballot processing, customer service, voter outreach, election coordination, communication, documentation, and record requests. This is a job description of an election director. So now, if he only got a budget, I'm just giving a number, if he only got a budget of $100,000, but to do what he need to do his job, it costs $180,000. This can affect a lot of urban areas, Mobile, Birmingham, Huntsville area, Mobile area, because of the fact that when you were a probate judge, you probably had enough funds to do it. But this will hurt these major cities in Montgomery because of the fact that we have lack of funds. That's why they had to reach out. And the integrity where we'll lose in this process is the fact that you have understaffed. Right now, our election center only have 3 employees. You got the election director and 2 females that's working in the whole center. So people that's working the elections, tell me how, they were using private money to help bring in people to help do the job. Now we lose the integrity of our process. I mean, it's America. We are built on democracy. We are built to encourage everybody to go vote. And now we want to restrict that process through not using private funds, and I just totally disagree with that. Because this will hurt us. This is going to hurt Montgomery. We already got voter apathy already. And now we're going to have so much confusion because of the fact of lack of resources. If this bill passes, and I encourage every member, because this is an election year, and it's going to be a serious problem, a lot of confusion to the point of people not be discouraged, lack of poll workers, because we got almost 60 precincts in Montgomery County. We got 60 precincts, and we can't afford to put in probably 30, 40, and we have to use extra money to put in the other 20. And this will cause a problem. And that's all. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And the chair thanks the gentleman. All right, members, the question now is go ahead and let's vote on the BIR. If you are in favor of the BIR, your vote will be aye. If you opposed, your vote is no. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Voting on the BIR. All the members voted. All the members voted. All the members voted. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. There are 72 yeas, 28 nays, 0 abstentions, and the BIR is adopted. All right, and Representative Allen, we're back on the bill now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Got a floor amendment.
All right, and the clerk received the amendment.
Amendment to House Bill number 194 by Representative Allen.
And Representative Allen, explain the amendment.
Yes, sir. Probate judges and other election officials reached out to me and asked if we would consider a friendly amendment as it relates to if there was another health emergency that was proclaimed. Certainly hope not, but if something like COVID-19 came along again, we want to make sure that we get this covered under this bill, but it basically states, if a state public health emergency is proclaimed, donations of items for the preservation or protection of the public health to be used by voters and election officials may be accepted by the office of the governor for distribution to each judge of probate. So, for instance, like hand sanitizers, masks, partitions, like we saw in the last election, we want to make sure we get that covered if another public health emergency is proclaimed by the governor.
Okay. All right, members, you've heard explanation of the amendment offered by the sponsor of the bill. It's on the floor. And the chair will recognize now the lady from Jefferson, Representative Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Jen, will you yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Just with your amendment, and I talked with you last night about this bill, and you were saying there were some counties that received outside funds. And just with the amendment you got, what happened if you got a small county, economically depressed, and they need these things and they don't have the fundings for them? They might need help in...
What kind of things? I'm sorry.
You're talking about hand sanitizer. We need to keep that all the time. But beyond that, suppose they need just paper supplies or things just to do their day-to-day work, and with the revenues coming into the county, they don't have those funds. Because I understood you to say you had several counties that accepted monies, but I never got the clarity as to what they used those outside funds for. Did they use them to help them do their day-to-day routine, or what did they use those funds for? Because that's similar. If they need hand sanitizer, if some type of health emergency come up, then that ought to be in a budgetary item also. So why would they need to accept that from other people when the monies that they got was probably monies they needed to carry out their day-to-day function and to make sure they had a smooth election? So,
What did they use the money for? Are you
Yeah.
asking me what those 7 counties that accepted the private grants in
Right.
the 2020 election? Well, we don't know because it was a private grant. There was no accountability that came along with that private funding back during 2020.
but did you
So,
go in to ask?
I did not ask.
And
because-
see, I think like that was important because
But-
suppose the monies that they got was just to make sure that they had all of the resources that they need. Because I can understand with small counties, and I can understand with large counties, you just don't get the revenues that you think you're gonna get. Because I could look at like the Jefferson County, yeah, we provide a lot of jobs, but I can promise you more than 50% of the people that work in Jefferson County don't pay any kind of taxes in there. Other than they might could get some occupational tax, but most of them don't buy no gas in Jefferson County, but they work there. They don't spend any other monies to generate revenues that would probably come to help the election officials make sure they have all of the resources that they need. And since there was no investigation done to determine what resources they might have spent the outside monies for. And I know the list of things that you say that they should not do, but why didn't we find out what they really spent it for, rather than coming up with the list? Because it's hard for me to believe that you got election officials. When I looked at the list, you said the things they shouldn't be doing. It's hard for me to see them putting out some kind of signage as it relates to election. That's one of the things that they should not use monies for that you got listed there. And I looked at mail-outs. Well, normally during election year, we do get that mail-out from the Secretary of State to let us know where our polling places is, what elections are going to occur in our county. So some of the things that are listed as the list of things that you got, I would have thought that to make that list, you would have investigated in these counties to make sure when they got those outside dollars, what did they use them for? Because suppose we have another pandemic like you have with your amendment, instead of people giving them wipes and hand sanitizer, suppose they give them the monies to purchase those items. Then they wouldn't be able to accept the money, but they can accept if you give them some bottles of hand sanitizer. So, you know, I think that it concerns me that there was no investigation done, but we arbitrarily come back and say that it was wrong what they did when we don't know what they spent the monies for. And I think that that's probably should have been the first step, because I do remember you saying it was several counties that accepted those outside grants and funding, but there was no indication that they used those fundings to help any specific candidate to get elected. So, you know, that raises concerns that we can, if I need hand sanitizer because of a pandemic, and some companies say, well, we'll just make a donation for you to buy that hand sanitizer. They wouldn't be able to take the donation, but if they wanted to donate the items, they could. And I think that that's a problem, because some people might just want to give them the money. And I do think that if this is what several counties did, that we need to investigate it before we just lower the hammer and punish everything. I heard Mr. Jackson, when it talks about their election was pretty fair, and then Secretary Merrill, you know, brags about how transparent the elections were in the state of Alabama. But I would rather that we do an investigation and find out what did they use those funds for, rather than we make assumptions that they used them for mail-outs and to help somebody to get elected, because we don't have that evidence to prove that. So, you know, I wish we could reconsider this, and even with the amendment, that if somebody wants to give funding, if there was a pandemic, rather than to put those supplies there. And the person might say, we don't want to go out and buy the supplies. We want you to have the monies to buy them. But because of the amendment, they can accept supplies but not monies. They can't take a grant to go buy the same thing. So the company will have to send somebody, or the foundation will have to send somebody out to buy the hand sanitizers or whatever else they needed if we had another pandemic or health emergency to come along. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you didn't pay me no attention.
No, I listened to you.
I hope the public did, so they can understand that there are better ways to solve some of the problems that we encounter in this state than just lowering the hammer. You know, like I told you last night, you the teacher, that just because old John cuts up in class all the time, everybody in the class has to suffer. And that's the way I look at this bill, because you could possibly have had some bad actors, but we didn't do an investigation to prove that. Then we just lower the hammer and put restrictions on everybody. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Chair thanks the lady. The chair now recognizes the lady from Jefferson, Representative Coleman. And we're still on the floor amendment offered by the sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. And this will be one of the few times I'm not going to use all of my 10 minutes, because I do actually have a question on the amendment itself.
Okay.
Can you read the amendment one more time for me, please? Because I thought the speaker was going to call me right away, so I had it good and fresh, so I need to hear it one more time.
Notwithstanding this section, if a state public health emergency is proclaimed, donations of items for the preservation or protection of the public health to be used by voters or election officials may be accepted by the office of the governor for distribution to each judge of probate, provided written notice of that donation is published on the governor's website and transmitted by press release to a media outlet in each county no more than 21 days and no less than 10 days prior to the distribution of the donated items. The written notice shall include the full name, address, and phone number of the donor and list of items, including descriptions and quantities and the dollar value. Items shall be distributed to each of the 67 counties equally. The governor may transfer the items to the office of the Secretary of State for distribution after publication of notice.
Okay. Thank you for reading that to bring it fresh back to me again.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and the purpose of having all of those people's names listed is,
Donors
yeah, so whoever.
providing the donations.
All right. So you gave an example when you first started reading that, which was partitions and.
Yeah, like that, or a
Yeah,
hand
yeah.
sanitizer, mask, or whatever.
Okay. So if we can accept donations such as partitions, hand sanitizer, what is this here? Antiseptic spray or whatever we need, what's the difference then accepting the monetary donation for then the governor's office to purchase the things? What's the difference?
I don't know that there is a difference, but we want to make sure that the donations are in hand and make sure that we're not,
Well, money can be in hand.
well,
So a financial donation could be made to purchase partitions, hand sanitizers,
we want to make sure we have a centralized
chairs,
location.
so
I guess
people,
it's just
you
a
know,
centralized location of items
don't even have an
to
issue
be
with that.
dispersed
That wasn't my issue.
to the various 67 counties.
But if the governor office can be a good steward of partitions, hand sanitizer, wipes, chairs, or whatever, can they also be a good steward of a grant or some dollars that came in to then distribute out to the various probate judges? I'm just trying to get it. I'm trying to understand it.
No, I think the amendment is strong, and I think the donations of items is what we need to stick with on this
So instead of a monetary donation, the governor needs to go get a big old warehouse now, big old warehouse that somebody's still going to have to pay for to put these items in, when
Not necessarily.
it could have been a monetary. I mean, if we're talking about partitions for across the state, there's 67 counties in my county. Actually, it's 2 counties within one. We have 2 probate
I
judges.
know you do.
So, and one of them speaks highly of you, and really had an opportunity to have a conversation with Judge Nafter about you. But Judge Friday speaks highly of you.
Yes.
But so instead of the governor's office or whomever having to then take in these, actual donations of partitions for 68 counties, right? And hand sanitizer and chairs or whatever.
It doesn't necessarily need to be in one centralized location.
I don't have an issue with the one centralized location. I just don't understand
said it
the
had to be a
difference
warehouse.
between. Well, it's gonna have to go somewhere.
They can drop
We
ship
don't
them.
have any
They
space
can
in
be
this
drop
building.
shipped from the company to the individual counties.
So, but you
equally
just
distributed.
No, that's not what you said. That's not what you said. You said the centralized location was the governor's office or
Well,
whatever you had in that
that's
amendment.
That's who's accepting the donations. That's who's accepting the donations.
But they could take in monetary donations that then could be distributed amongst the counties, and then the various counties could get what they actually need. Because I'm in Jefferson, we might not need the
Yeah,
same.
I know where you're headed with it.
We might not need the same type of
But this
partition.
this is about accountability, and I believe this is a amendment that offers good, strong accountability with donations.
So they're
items.
okay with taking in the governor
items.
that a lot of you all support. We don't trust her with the money, but we trust her. You all. I said you all. I did say that. I did not even say y'all. I said you all. Although an English teacher one time told me that not to say that. Some of y'all don't know that I'm not like indigenous from Alabama, although I sound like I am now. When I first came here, I just could not say y'all. So I would say you all the time. And the teacher told me, quit doing that. Don't say you all. So, but that same governor, and I like her a lot too, personally. We can trust her with those items, but we can't trust her with money. I'm just trying to figure it out. Doesn't make sense to me.
We got a strong amendment. It's about accountability.
I would disagree, because if we are going to take those things in the event, and I really hope that we don't have, I really hope we don't have anything. I mean, we're still in the midst of something right now. People walk around like we're not, but we are still in the midst of COVID. But in the event that we have another incident like what we had in 2020, whatever government it is, because hopefully this one will, if it comes out, it'll be termed out or whatever the case may be. I hope I'm not even here then. That person, we would trust them with the stuff but not with any money to distribute it. And that just doesn't make sense to me. And I said I wasn't going to use my full 10 minutes, so I'm going to be a woman of my word. And I guess I'm going to go over here and sit down and think about what I'm going to do with this amendment that just simply doesn't make sense to me.
It's a good amendment.
Thank you. Not to me.
Chair thanks the lady. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Mayor Jones. Speaking, we're still on the floor amendment offered by the sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. And gentleman, yield.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
While we were talking about amendments, I got a letter a little earlier today, or email a little earlier today, from a lady named Ms. Barbara Manuel, who is the president of the National Federation of the Blind, Alabama affiliate. And what she says is the language is vague enough to be interpreted in a variety of ways. The blind community and other citizens of Alabama rely on organizations that provide voter education and other vital information so everyone can make informed decisions during elections. She is concerned that the groups that's been helping the blind and been assisting them in the election process would be affected by the legislation.
Well, Representative, I don't think the language in this bill is vague at all. I think it's very clear in its intent. Did she give an example of the vagueness?
I think that there are several nonprofits that transport them, help them to the polls. And
this bill doesn't affect that.
She said a lot of her members do not vote absentee by choice. They would rather be taken to the polls. Sure. And there are groups who do political education with them and then take them to the polls, and she's concerned that that service wouldn't be available under the bill.
This bill would not affect that at all.
Okay.
Any private organization that wants to help that school and those individuals or that organization is still free to do that under this piece of legislation. It doesn't affect them at all.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And the chair thanks the gentleman.
Yes, sir.
The chair recognizes the lady from Mobile, Representative Drummond. Is she in the chamber? Okay, all right, let's go on to the next one. We'll come back to her. The gentleman from Jefferson County, Representative Rogers, on the floor amendment. Okay, we'll recognize you on the bill then. Okay, all right. And the gentleman from Marengo County, Representative Jackson, speaking on the floor amendment. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. You. So, gentleman from Marengo County, Representative McCampbell. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. I was afraid that someone had moved over there in my place named Jackson. So, I was confused there. That's the reason I stood there for a minute. Will the gentleman yield?
Sure. It's your 10 minutes.
For 10 minutes?
No, it's your 10 minutes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay. I think the amendment goes a long ways. What is that?
It's some.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the amendment goes a long ways in terms of clarifying some of the things that can occur.
Yes, sir.
And with the health issue, especially since we did just go through a pandemic.
Yes, sir.
in that amendment, though, I think we also need to look at a few other things. When a pandemic hits, one of the things that I'm concerned about is whether or not we have the ability to let people know where they are to vote. There are all of us that went through this pandemic. We all had a lot of things that we were trying to adjust to. So, yeah, this amendment will help with that. But, and maybe I'm probably wanting to be more on the bill right now, but what about situations, and you can tell me about this, when a individual or a county has only 3 people that are working.
In a
But
precinct? In a
yeah.
particular precinct?
Not just in a precinct, but they have just 3 people that are working in the courthouse, in the clerk's office, because I had a lot to deal with.
The absentee election
that.
manager, circuit
Yes.
clerk? Okay.
Yeah, I had, over this pandemic, we had an influx of absentee ballots. And what about the people that are having to stay? And election officials do not have enough funding to pay these people. What are we doing? What are we going to do about those kind of issues?
Well, it goes back to priorities. And I know that what your example is about not having enough funding, but it goes back to your priorities. But the state of Alabama covers those expenses. Even Mr. Merrill recently said that I got the quote here. Got it here someplace.
So the state of Alabama then is obligated to
covers those election expenses.
So as one of my
Yeah.
colleagues was pointing out, the need to mail out to this would be the voter registrars, the need to mail out the changes in voting precincts and things.
We just went through redistricting, so the Board of Registrars right now are mailing those cards out to anybody that may have been affected by the changes at the local level, right?
Okay.
So that's what's going out now, and that process is taking place right now in Pike County. I've talked to my Board of Registrars all the time, and so they're going through that process.
And that is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get to the next election, and we have
in May.
Well, not the one in May, but I'm talking about the one in 24.
Okay.
Once we get to those areas, how are we going to still have the funding? And
right.
I guess you're saying that the state of Alabama is responsible for putting on an election.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct. I mean, I can read you Mr. Merrill's quote. It says, he made it in a news article recently, last day or so. We made it clear, quote, we made it clear to every county in the state, all 67 counties in the 2020 election cycle, if you need resources for any purpose in the 2020 election cycle, you just need to ask us for them. Tell us what you need them for, and then we'll provide it. And then he went on and he said, however, some counties were overzealous, and whenever somebody is standing there with the dollar bills, they want to stick their hand out and say, we would like to have those resources, end quote. That's what he said. He said that if the counties we just asked, they would take care of it.
Okay. Now, the other thing then is, what about those educational components? I know we have organizations that will put on a voter education seminar, and they bring Secretary Merrill in, or they bring the election officials in. What about those type of things? Because
If a probate judge is asked to come give a talk on voter registration, voter whatever, they're free to do this under this bill. They just can't get compensated for it. There can't be private money going to help put on that seminar by the probate judge. So if the League of Women Voters had a seminar and they asked the local probate judge, hey, can you come talk about whatever aspect about the election? They're free to go do that, but they can't get paid and compensated for it.
Okay. Well, I want to come back on the bill. I just wanted to get some clarification on this part.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And the chair thanks the gentleman. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Dallas County, Representative Chestnut.
Where you been all session?
Been up there on the 6th floor.
Okay. I knew I'd been missing you.
The first question, this gentleman yield.
Sure.
Okay, first question I have for you is what is the pernicious evil that you seek to chastise with this bill? What is the
Rephrase.
Is this because of Mark Zuckerberg?
Well, we saw in the 2020 election how the Zuckerberg money went to the private nonprofit, who then funneled it to over 2,000 counties around the country.
Okay.
And that private money went to these local jurisdictions responsible for the conduct of election administration.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with a case called Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission? Let me say this. It was a case that came out around 2010.
Is that the one that went to the Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court, the 5-4 decision. And one of the holding out of that case was that the First Amendment does not distinguish or differentiate between people and corporations, right?
All right.
So a nonprofit corporation has just as much right to speak.
That's a campaign finance issue, right?
Right? Huh?
That's a campaign finance issue, right?
No, this is a First Amendment holding. Okay.
It deals with campaign finance.
That case,
correct?
yeah, but you do understand that Supreme Court cases are not finite and just dealing with one little piece of the law, because if it did, they wouldn't be Supreme Court cases. It's about being broad and sweeping and powerful and speaking for the nation, right? So my point is that the First Amendment, right, gives people the right to speak with their money.
This bill does not affect private organizations or private citizens.
Okay, but
from going out and educating the public on voter outreach, voter registration, and other things as it pertains to the elections process.
But you're saying that Zuckbucks are wrong, or in one of my counties, in Perry County, they received an Arnold Schwarzenegger grant, and it helped my clerk tremendously in being able to have what she needed in a poor county to do what needed to be done, right? So,
I mean, I don't, in my opinion, it shouldn't be liberal money or conservative money, private money coming into the local jurisdiction responsible for elections. We just don't, I'm putting up a firewall for no private money to enter these probate offices, circuit clerk offices, or board of, that's the firewall we're seeking to place.
I mean, do you think that the probate
private nonprofits are still free to go do their voter education? This bill does not affect them. This is a very limited bill. It's very clear in its intent.
So what does the probate judges or the clerks do that's so wrong by accepting money to help, with their office being able to educate the public? how is that a wrong? Shouldn't that be something that should be celebrated?
Well, my philosophy is it's the candidate's job to do the, and these nonprofits to do the education. The job of the probate judge, circuit clerk, absentee election manager, and board of registrars is to run the elections in a safe and secure manner.
Okay, but what I'm still trying to figure out, you're still limiting
Well, this is a limited bill.
people's speech.
No, it's not.
You're saying they can't,
No.
they can't
It does not limit people's speech.
support getting out the vote. That's what you're saying.
No. The private nonprofits, any private citizen is still free to go do on their own about voter education and voter outreach. But that money cannot go through a local jurisdiction.
Yeah, but but what I'm telling you is that the First Amendment is implicated in this, right? So you just can't say, oh yeah, we just don't like this money going here. Tell me what's the wrong that comes out of this by, I don't know, Zuckerberg or George Soros or the Koch Foundation. Tell me what's so invidious and wrong and evil about do you have proof that the clerks or the probate judges are steering elections in an illegal manner?
Here's what the bill does. It's very clear, and we've talked about it before at this microphone. It's making sure we're putting up a firewall where no private money can flow into these public offices that are responsible for the conduct of our elections. I don't know how much clearer I need to say that these private organizations can still go do voter outreach and voter education on their own. It doesn't touch them at all. It's not going to touch them.
Well,
it limits the public official who is responsible for the conduct of our election to accept private money.
Okay, but one of these same organizations could write a $100,000 check to the clerk or to the probate judge of said county, right? And you feel comfortable with that, right?
Repeat that. I couldn't.
I said these same companies or people could write a $100,000 check to said clerk or probate judge, and you don't see anything wrong with that, right?
I don't understand your question, Representative.
Well, you're saying that the money causes problems, but then I'm trying to find out what is the issue. What's the evil? What's the problem that you're trying to correct with this legislation?
To make sure we don't have any undue influence on our elections process. It's to put the firewall up to make sure no private funding comes into these local jurisdictions and these public officials who are responsible for the conduct of our elections.
And my question to you again is, you don't see any undue influence if somebody writes a $100,000 check to a candidate, right? There's nothing wrong with that
this bill does not affect campaign finance at all.
But you're fine with people writing $100,000 checks to people, right?
That's part of the process to help us get here.
Okay, but that's not undue influence. But if I write, if I'm a multimillionaire and I write $100,000 to the clerk,
it's two separate issues.
But it's restricting, the bottom line is it's restricting free speech. It's about, you're trying to get, if someone's trying to get out the vote, and you're saying that we're putting parameters and restrictions on you to...
They're still free to get out the vote. They're still free to go do any kind of seminar they want to go do.
Well, people said the same thing about the poll tax to my ancestors. You just pay the poll tax and you'll be able to vote. It was a restriction. That's the point.
It's not the same thing. This is to make sure the firewall is up, Representative, to make sure no private funding enters these local jurisdictions that are responsible for the conduct of our elections.
Okay.
We don't want any influence from that outside money coming into these probate judges' office or circuit clerks. Private companies should not be helping to purchase our voting equipment.
But they can write you a $100,000 check, and that's just fine.
It's not the same issue. It's not the same issue. We're talking about the safe, secure conduct of our elections.
Well, are you alleging that the machines are
No.
pre-configured to?
No.
What was the name of those machines? I
don't know. What was it?
What was it? Dominion or something like that? Are you saying that because these folks are paying for them, that they're buying faulty machinery to run the
Just
election?
saying as an example that private individuals or private companies should not be helping to buy machines. That is a core function of our government is to run safe and secure elections. Just like a core function of our government is public safety.
And it would be no problem for someone to, a private donor, because it's in the law, you can purchase equipment for the local police department and, no one will reject that, right? I don't see you saying that we don't.
Well, I'm here today to deal with the elections process. That's a
No,
whole
but I'm
separate
taking
issue.
your logic and I'm
That's a whole-
applying
that's a
it
whole
to
separate
other
issue.
scenarios, right? I mean, we're up here, we're lawmakers, right? We're making laws.
Yep.
And so when we make laws and we use logic, and I'm just using your logic to show you that, the First Amendment protects speech, right?
And the gentleman's time. Quorum check? Yeah, we'll take one. Let's see what we got here. Just a minute. Mr. Clerk, help me out here. All right. Yeah. With what we have upstairs and here on the floor, we got a quorum check. We're okay. Mr. Clerk? Did you get the two in the bathroom, John? Are we going to can we use those that go in the bathroom? Okay. And how about those standing right there in the hallway? Well, anyway, we've got the numbers here. So let's go ahead and continue. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Dad, he's something else. Yeah, I know it.
All right, let's go to the next speaker. The lady from, let's see, she was here. I saw her here. The lady from Mobile. Her light's still on. Is she on the floor? All right, let's go with the gentleman from Clark County, Representative Jackson. You're recognized. And Representative Rogers, they may be leaving after you asked for the quorum count there. Let's go with you. Your light's on. Let's let you come down and speak. The gentleman from Jefferson is being recognized. Yeah, come on down. Let's speak. Yeah, we got the numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, thank
Sir.
you. We'll get in a minute.
Ring the bell. I want everybody to hear me, Mr. Speaker. There's nobody in here. We counted, and I haven't counted how many, Mr. Clerk, how many we got in here, please? Can I ask you, Clerk, how many you count? Hey, better hurry out everybody in the bathroom better run out the
There was
bathroom
54 when he counted.
Beg pardon?
54 when he counted.
Okay, 54, okay. Include who? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, all right. I'm gonna take the clerk's word. There's 54 here, but if he verified 54, I don't count 54. We just counted. I don't see 54 in here. That's my eyes deceiving me or something like that. But I don't see 54 people in plus the chamber. Hey, somebody else count. I'm seeing double beard here, evidently. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not 54. I don't count 54.
Let's go ahead with our business at hand. We've got a quorum. We have a quorum.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Well, I guess my elementary school teacher got to talk to me again because I don't count the 54, but I take the clerk's hand. But the irony about this bill is that why is the bill necessary? I mean, why do you think this bill is necessary?
Well, Mr. Rogers, I've been standing here a while, and
I know you have. I've stood in wheel sometimes for 8 hours. So
again, it's to make sure that there's a firewall where no private money can go to these state and local public officials in charge of running our elections. A core function of our government is to ensure safe and secure elections. These private individuals and private nonprofits are still free to go and do voter education and voter outreach. This bill does not impact them at all.
Well, do you feel our elections are unfair? I mean, I know our president, ex-president, said it was unfair. Do you feel our elections are unfair enough to have this kind of bill? Really, what does it do if a candidate, ain't that a candidate that want to have a tour bus come in and go and work? Why is this bill necessary?
It does not affect any candidate about voter outreach or voter registration. All it affects and limits is public officials that are in charge of our elections. They cannot accept private donations to help with election-related expenses.
Is the Secretary of State bill aimed at the Secretary of State?
If you're not the Secretary of State, the probate judge, circuit clerk, absentee election manager, board of registrars, or a poll worker, this bill does not affect you at all.
All right. Well, does the candidate still have let me ask you a question. I'm running for re-election.
Yes, sir.
All right. Right now, I can still send out voter canvassing and stuff like that. What does it affect for the
It doesn't affect you at all. You can certainly do that.
All right. Well, what is the core reason for the bill? What is the core of it does?
It's to make sure that private money does not come into these local jurisdictions to these offices that are over our elections. Probate judges, the circuit clerks, absentee election managers.
What do you consider private money? I mean, if I'm trying to raise, and Mr. Speaker, if he decided to run re-election, he gonna raise money from private sources.
It does not affect campaign finance. If you need to raise private money, you can still do that running for re-election.
So a candidate
it does not affect campaign finance.
Call everybody I know, my friends, grandmamas, and granddaddies.
You are still free to raise money.
Everything. So I need some help to run my campaign.
You are still free to raise money. This does not affect campaign finance.
Well, who does it affect? The bill had to have some rationale behind it, so what's the rationale behind who it affects? I'm serious about the bill.
I know you are. I hear you.
Well, who does it affect?
It makes sure that no private money can flow to these local jurisdictions, meaning your probate judges, your circuit clerks, your absentee election managers, your board of registrars. To help them run the election.
Hey, is my grandmother considered private? If I ask my grandmother, if I ask my next door neighbor for money, that's private sources.
Let's read section.
Read that section.
This is page 3, line 17. Notwithstanding any other law, no state or local public official responsible for the conduct of an election nor his or her employee may solicit, accept, or use any donation in the form of money, grants, property, or personal services from an individual or a non-governmental entity for the purpose of funding election-related expenses.
Stop right there. Hey, read what you just said. And I know it's speaking running for re-election again now. God bless him, and I know he got other things going to do.
Are you responsible for the conduct of an election? Are you a probate judge?
Well, yeah. If I'm running an election, I'm responsible for my election. If I'm running, I'm running an election. If I'm
You are not responsible for the conduct of an election.
If I'm campaigning for office,
You're running for this office.
This office,
Right.
I'm responsible for the people. I'm responsible. All right. Well,
This does not affect you, Representative.
Well, who does it affect? If it don't affect me, it don't affect everybody running for office. Who does it affect?
It affects any state or local public official responsible for the conduct.
Stop.
Responsible for the conduct of the administration of our election process.
What you just said, any state or elected local official, you said that, right? You said any state, say that again.
So that would be the Secretary of State as a state official. Your local officials are the probate judge, your circuit clerk, absentee election manager, board of registrars, poll workers, anybody that helps in the administration of the election laws.
Well, you just said any state official. We consider state officials,
No,
right?
that is not who this covers.
Well, that's what the bill says. The bill says any state. Read that part again, what you just said, and then you tell me what you just said again, how you interpret that.
Representative, this bill is
that
very clear about what this bill lays out and what it does, the intent of the bill. Is to make sure it puts up a firewall where no private funding goes to any public official that is responsible for the conduct of our elections and the administration of our election laws.
I'm going to ask you a question. You sit here every day and make laws that affect folks.
You do too.
Yeah, both of us do.
Yeah.
See, so therefore, you are a public official. You exactly what the bill is saying. That's you. That's us. Read it again real slow for yourself, because it's very clear.
It's talking about the conduct of the election.
Just read it again.
The conduct of the election. It's very clear. It's very clear. The conduct of the election.
All right. Who was responsible for the conduct of your election when you ran for office?
Sir?
When you ran for office, who was responsible for the conduct of your election? Who was responsible? You were, right?
When I was probate judge, yeah. I ran the election in Pike County. I was the chief elections official.
Hey, I'm talking about you ran for the state representative.
I was the probate judge when I ran for state representative.
So if you want, it didn't affect you, right? As probate judge.
I was the chief elections official for Pike County for many years.
So what about as a state representative? It didn't affect you. You said, but that's not what you read. You said any elected official. That's what you read, and then you said now it doesn't affect you. But that's not what. That's what. If the speaker ran for office again, it would affect him.
It's not going to affect.
Why wouldn't it? I mean, when that's what the bill says.
I don't know how many more times I've got to
read it real slow, and then hey,
reading it slow going to make it easier to understand.
Read it slow, and then let it soak in what you're saying. Ledbetter can tell you. It'll affect him. Read it real slow.
He's bringing you into this.
Yeah, he elected official, isn't he? He's elected official.
The intent of the bill is very, very clear.
Irregardless of the intent of the bill, it still has the same intent. I mean,
and the gentleman's time. All right. Let's move along. The chair recognizes the lady from Montgomery, Representative Morris.
Chestnut. Would the gentleman, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, ma'am, you're recognized.
Would the gentleman yield? Well, that smile that you be giving me all the time. You don't have it right now. This is not
For 10 minutes.
I know I got 10 minutes. I could talk in 10 minutes. Come on. Let's, Go ahead. I got it.
Doesn't the speaker have to recognize him?
Got to walk out. Huh?
Doesn't the speaker,
No, I'm not about to pass it on.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
You were bossing him around. I was just curious.
I told you I'm trying to be like Mike Jones.
Oh.
What part of this y'all ain't understanding?
She was. She was. She's directing traffic.
Now we want to do an official quorum call. Can we do a
Yes, ma'am. We done one a while ago. We'll do another one.
Yeah, let's do one.
Okay. All right.
Can
all right.
we do like a voice vote, so we can definitely know?
So are you bringing a point of order then for a quorum call? Is
Yes,
that your
yes, sir.
question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. We can respect that. All right, Mr. Clerk.
It still ain't gonna be enough. Miss Hall, come on. Woo, welcome.
So we got 50, 52, 50, 54. We've got 54 people here.
You saying let's work, but every time we count it, we not count 54.
You had one in the office there. You had one in the bathroom. Where you? It's your call. It's your call. But it's. I'm going to go with the clerk and number, and it's my call.
We'll go with the clerk.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Come on back to Mr. Allen until my people come back inside. You know, we don't have a lot of things that we can do when we are super minority, so we have to try to come up with some kind of strategies that we can use while we.
Listen, I understand. Use the
inside.
rules to your
Yeah,
benefit. I
yeah.
have no problem with that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Allen, can you please explain the bill to me again?
It's a 4-page bill. It doesn't take long to read. I'm assuming you've read it, correct?
You said what now?
It's a 4-page bill. I'm assuming you have read it, correct?
No, you can't assume.
Really?
I'm just down here asking you to.
Well, it's
you
your
know,
10 minutes.
Give me.
We're already at 6.5.
So you're not going to explain it?
Well, I've taken a lot of time explaining
asked the
bill, and
gentleman
you hadn't been
which-
listening. There was one of our colleagues, a couple weeks ago, chastised us on this floor for not paying attention and not reading bills.
Okay, so
So
let's
you haven't read the bill?
Let's say I did read the bill, and let's say a standing ovation is in order. Let's say I did read it.
Okay.
And now I want you to
very
explain
clear.
it in your words because I didn't
The
understand
bill is very
it.
clear. Very clear.
Unless you don't understand
We're
it.
putting up, well, I didn't say it very clear.
Okay, well, give me what you got.
Well, it puts up a firewall where no public money can go to any state or local public official who is responsible for the conduct of our election. So if you are not a Secretary of State, the probate judge, circuit clerk, absentee election manager, board of registrar, or any poll worker, this bill does not affect you. Any private organization that wants to go out and do voter registration, voter education, they are still free to do this. This bill does not affect them in any way.
So it just affect the people who you just named. And what
Run the elections.
What kind of way does it affect them?
Now,
How does it affect them? The ones that you just named.
they cannot accept private funding.
But I heard you say that they can.
And as it relates to election-related expenses.
Okay, to just show you that I was actually kind of listening just a little bit.
And election-related expenses are payments and salaries or bonuses for election officials, board of registrars and poll workers, for election officials, board of registrars and poll workers, expenses related to equipment, ballots, printing, mailing, or transportation, expenses related to signage or media production, expenses relating to lectures, educational seminars, or events to train election officials, boards of registrars, or poll workers.
Okay,
Those are election-related expenses.
okay. So I guess that'll be something that you'll be ready to bring since, you know, I don't want to say it out loud, but you know. Right, see, there you go.
It's a good bill. It's a strong bill.
Every time people come up, they always say the same thing.
It is a good bill.
This is a good bill,
It is.
or I'm glad
Y'all have
that
good bills, right?
that you brought the bill. We always say the same thing when we come down, but then you have people on the other side who say, it's not such a good bill. But I guess when you have your mind made up to say that it's a good bill to you, and the others around you have their mind made up to say that it's a good bill to them, then the small percentage that's saying it's not such a good bill.
No, I hear you. I understand
then,
where you're coming from.
I have 3 minutes.
You sure do. 3
Yeah.
minutes and 40 seconds
Yeah. So what made you bring this bill?
to protect elections.
To protect elections from being what?
To make sure there is no private money coming to influence the local jurisdictions that are responsible for the conduct of our elections.
You sound like you're tired of repeating that.
Well, I've talked about it ad nauseum up here for a long
That's
time.
part of the process, though.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna tell you how we feel
I
when.
believe you haven't been listening.
Now, yeah, we be listening, but we still,
Really?
yeah, because we got to come in and we got to get this done because, your leader come with this little paper.
Ma'am?
Your leader come with this little paper, and then we
Maybe he has it. I don't know.
No, he hadn't came with it yet, and we're saying thank you for giving us this wonderful grace time to be able to come up and actually have this conversation with you. Glad to see you back smiling, because a minute ago I thought I was gonna have to do something to you when we left this mic. I'm just playing, right?
I'm always smiling.
No, but it was a different type of smile. You was like, I don't want to answer none of these questions.
No, we're having a friendly conversation.
Okay, but it's a
Dialogue.
Huh?
Right? Dialogue.
Yes, yes. And it's been good. And I think this is the longest we had to talk.
Really?
Yeah,
No.
in passing.
No.
10 minutes. Now, we might talk for about 3 minutes or 4 minutes, especially if I see you in the hallway and I say, now, come on. What are you doing? Remember, that was like brief conversations, but this like
It's a good conversation.
a 10-minute. We did have good conversations,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we
and
had
you
good
always pass by.
I always speak.
Always smiling, smiling.
It's always better to smile, right?
It is. Even when you're upset, it's good to smile.
Yep.
Because guess what? It doesn't do any
Right.
good to be upset.
That's right.
Not at all. You see how I'm leaning up here? This Mike Jones. So I'm gonna let you have the rest of my time. Don't say it like that, because you make me feel like you don't want to keep talking to me. Because you like, all right, like go. I like that. Have a good day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Chair thanks the lady. And the chair recognizes the gentleman from DeKalb County, Representative Ledbetter. He's got the piece of paper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I bring a motion right to the previous question.
All right, the clerk received the...
Motion in writing, Mr. Speaker. I move the previous question.
All right, members, the question before us now is going to be on the previous question. If you are in favor of this request, then your vote will be aye. If you're opposed, your vote is no. Clerk will unlock the machine. The members will vote. All the members voted. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. There are 72 yeas, 18 nays, 0 abstentions, and the previous question does prevail. Now, members, we are voting on the floor amendment offered by the sponsor. And before we do that, that's right, we're going to have an opportunity for 10 minutes of speaking. And the chair recognizes the lady from Mobile, Representative Drummond.
It's an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You're taking up my time. Representative, I really am not, I'm going to talk about the amendment, but that's not my focal point, but it seems that it takes me a hard time to get called to the mic. I've got a situation, I've been listening, I listened very intently, and I did read the bill. So I know that you believe every person has a constitutional right to vote, right?
Sure.
Okay. In my county, I got a letter, and I'm sure many of you in this house get these letters from inmates in the county jail who have not been adjudicated, so they're still presumed innocent. Am I correct? They still have a right to vote, correct?
If they hadn't been
They have not been to court. They have not been.
Yeah,
Okay, so they have a right to vote. So this is a real life incident. I get a letter from an inmate, then I get a letter and a call from his family members, and they said to me, now I know that you've been up here a minute, but please give me the respect. I've been waiting for a long time. But anyway, I get a call that this individual was not being allowed to vote. And by the way, the rest of the story, he did go to court and was found innocent. But in that meantime, I found out that none of those inmates in the county jail who's under the sheriff were being allowed to cast an absentee ballot. Thanks to my sheriff, my senator and I went to the sheriff, had a long 3 or 4 week meeting saying, how can we rectify this? He agreed, just like you did, that everybody who has a right to vote, that's their constitutional right, even those that are incarcerated in county jails. So the sheriff said to me, he said, Representative, I agree with you, but we cannot absorb the cost. We can do the absentee ballots here in the jail, set up the process and so forth, but we cannot absorb the mailing costs. Because we can't just go and, even though they're a deputy or the sheriff, he can't go to the election office and say, here's all of the absentee ballots from the jail, which was fine with me. I said, okay, let's set this up. And this happens in all of our jails because I called some other sheriff. And so he was nice enough to set up a process so that those individuals would have a constitutional right to vote to cast an absentee ballot. My senator and I made an agreement with him. You don't have to pay for the postage. We will give you the money to pay for the postage. We'll even bring the stamps to you. We'll do whatever we need to do, but we feel those individuals deserve to vote. With that scenario, who would be in violation of the law that you're proposing? Me or the sheriff, who is in charge of elections?
I'm not familiar with the story. I've not heard this. This is the first I've heard of it.
Well, sir, it's a real life story. I can bring my senator down here. We worked on this for a number of months.
I'm not doubting.
We brought an organization.
I'm not doubting that
we
it's
went
not
to the
true.
League
I
of
just haven't
Women
heard it.
Voters. We went to others and said, guys, we need to make sure these folks are eligible to vote, that they can vote. They couldn't go out. And this young man, like I said, he was adjudicated. He was found innocent of the crime that he had been charged with. And that process continues till this day. Because of the agreement, we went and sat down with the sheriff very reasonably and said these individuals have a right to vote.
I'm sure they do.
Would the sheriff be in violation?
The sheriff?
Would anybody on his staff be in violation?
Be in violation. What do you mean by
Of your law? If this law was passed, I'm trying to understand. You kept telling everybody about probate judges, election officials, and you mentioned the sheriff.
Yeah, the sheriffs are part of the process.
So here I am. I'm not a part of the law. I heard all the exchanges, so I'm not a part. But I want to make sure the individuals who are incarcerated in that jail are afforded the opportunity to vote. That's their constitutional right, the ones who have not been adjudicated. So with the sheriff agreeing to allow, and I'm going to use me, to say you will provide, because they don't have money, so I didn't want him to use that as an excuse. So would he be in violation if your law was passed?
If he took a private donation to help any part of the election process, it would be on the sheriff.
Do you think that's right? Here are these individuals They've gotten in trouble. They are presumed innocent until they're found guilty. And they landed in jail. One of them had the good sense to say, and I know y'all get these letters because I get them all the time. And then his folks started calling me because they were in my district. So how is that right? If these individuals, you said earlier, they should be allowed to vote, but they can't go to the ballot box. Absentee voting is the only way that they can do it. I'm just showing where I think there's a flaw in what you're presenting today. That's all I wanted, because this is something real life. I've got it documented. I don't go in there anymore because they recognize it. But when they need stamps and whatever to mail those absentee ballots, we get them that funding, or we get them those stamps to be able to do that.
What about
you will be
family?
cutting off.
What about
you
family?
will be stopping
What about
in my
family?
jail right now.
Do they have family that can help them? What about
Is
family?
it the family's responsibility to allow that person to have the right to vote, or is
Family-
it government?
Family could.
It is government's right.
family
It is
couldn't bring them a stamp?
You cannot stand here. Well, put it in your law. Families can then go and get the private donations to the jail. I don't know.
They can
I'm just
certainly go give
trying to
information
point out to
to
you
their-
a flaw that
to
I
their
see
loved one that happens
that
to be
all
in
of
jail.
us in this house, everybody in this house, we've got a county jail. And there are in my county, sometimes it goes as much as 1,000 people. And they have not been adjudicated.
Can he not buy a stamp from the commissary? Do they not have ability to do that?
Now, Representative.
I'm just asking. I don't know.
I don't.
Asking.
All I
haven't heard the
know is
story.
this individual
I'm just
said,
dialoguing with you. I don't
Representative,
know.
I want to vote. It's my constitutional right. Nobody, especially those that are incarcerated in county jails throughout this state, should have that thing over their head that they cannot vote. We shouldn't make it harder. What if they don't have family members? Have you ever thought of that? Then who do you go to? This individual had a family member, but there are many in the jails that don't. And again, I don't think the sheriff, I actually was happy. We sat down for 3 meetings, 3 months, we talked to the sheriff and worked out a process to allow those individuals the opportunity to vote. And I said I wasn't gonna take all of this, so I think I'll end now, but seriously, that's a flaw. Sheriff shouldn't be put under that kind of penalty when it's about the constitutional right to vote. No fraud, they're incarcerated and they're behind bars.
And the chair thanks the lady. The chair recognizes the lady from Madison, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do have some comments I'd like to make later, but I'll do them later. Are you able to tell me what personal service is? I do have an amendment. And if you would look on page 1, line 12, if you would delete property or personal services. I could not find a description. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I could not.
You said page 1, line what?
Page 1, line 12, delete property or personal services, and in lieu thereof, the following, or property. And so the thing, tell me then, what does personal?
Go, and I'm gonna allow you to go ahead and talk about your amendment. We cannot accept an amendment based upon the fact.
Well,
that
Mr.
we
Speaker,
want
you
proof
were
of question.
aware that I had an amendment.
And we've been trying to work with you and him to
No,
try to
you-
see,
you
he was
sent a
he
message.
was not accepting any amendment.
But it doesn't matter, Mr. Speaker, it's
Go.
my right.
Yeah, go.
I have a right to offer it, I mean, to take that from me.
Not after the previous question, you don't.
I understand.
You know-
but
you know
I'm
the
saying,
rules.
I understand the rule, but
Yes, ma'am.
that process that you used by sending Mr. Tuggle up to ask me if I had talked to him and he had gotten an amendment.
That was part of it.
That was part of it, but you never came back and said to me, oh, we're not gonna let you offer that amendment. The message I get from him is he doesn't accept the amendment. There's no
Go
place.
ahead.
There's
Go
no
ahead. Go
place.
ahead and talk about it there for a minute.
There is no place. When you look for personal service, look under the definition for personal service. What does that mean?
Page 1, line 12, right?
Right. What does it mean?
Property or personal services, I'm assuming that would mean transportation.
That's what you're doing. There is no I couldn't find. I went to Wexel, I look for the personal service, a service based on intellectual manual effort of an individual, as for salary or wages, rather than a sizable product. That's one. There is nothing, went through all of this information, and so you have an arbitrary word that's listed in this particular
That's in the
definition.
synopsis.
It
All right.
is, but
And
it also
the
is on
ladies'
that
time.
page.
Not in the law, it's in the
Mr.
synopsis.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I would like to express my displeasure at the way in which this was handled. Thank you.
All right. Yes, ma'am. All right, members, let's go ahead. And the question before us is now going to be on the amendment that was offered on the floor by the sponsor. If you are in favor of this amendment, your vote is aye. If you oppose, your vote is no. Clerk will unlock the machine, and the members will vote. All the members voted. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 72 yeas, 28 nays, 0 abstentions, and the amendment is adopted. Now, members, we're on final passage of House Bill 194 as amended. If you're in favor of this bill, your vote is aye. If you're opposed, your vote is no. Clerk will unlock the machine, and the members will vote. All the members voted. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. There are 72 yeas, 28 nays, 0 abstentions. And House Bill 194 is passed. Yes, sir. Chair thanks the gentleman. All right, and the chair recognizes Representative Kitchens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House leave the journal open until such time as the clerk completes his paperwork, at which point we will stand in adjournment until Tuesday, March 15th at 1 p.m.
All right, you've heard the motion before you. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, I think the ayes have it. We are adjourned, members.